Hello and welcome to Mad Talk. I'm delighted to have with me today and for the next few weeks the Reverend Dr. Brandon Harris. Brandon's wife Jennifer and his children Parks and Ava are members here at Coming First United Methodist Church, and Brandon is an elder in the North Alabama Conference of the United Methodist Church and is currently appointed to an extension ministry called Generis, which is located in Johns Creek. Brandon, welcome to Mad Talk.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit about Generis and what Generis does and how you have been working with us to build generosity here at Coming First United Methodist Church.
Well, Generis is an organization that is focused on helping churches and faith-based ministries to raise the funds they need for ministry. As you know, that there's often this huge gap between the vision that a ministry has and the funds that they have available, and we want to help churches and ministries really fulfill and live into the vision that God's laid on their hearts. And so we work with hundreds and hundreds of churches every year throughout the country, so I was so blessed to be able to come alongside you and Gia and others in leadership here to sort of help figure out how can we grow in generosity here at Coming First, because one of the things that I strongly believe is that generosity is an aspect of discipleship. And if we want to grow as disciples, then we have to get serious with our resources and God's call on those resources and how we use those as followers of Jesus.
Absolutely. Well, we are most blessed to have you and your family here at Coming and your help with all of this.
Yeah, it has been a fun journey, and we've learned a lot about each other. Of course, we've learned a lot about the church and how people think about giving. I'm curious as we're entering into this season in November. I'm curious to know a little bit more about your giving journey. Tell me, when did you first think about giving? How did you start to live into a life of generosity?
Yeah, well, my giving story actually starts very early. My parents taught my sister and I from a very early age that we were to give 10% of everything that we got, whether it was a birthday gift or a Christmas gift or we were very entrepreneurial as kids. We went around the neighborhood and found ways to make money. There was a little restaurant, quick store up just north of our subdivision. So we were always trying to find ways to make money so we could go have pancakes at the restaurant, or could go play some more Donkey Kong or Frogger or some of those arcade games that was up at the store. So we went around mowing lawns. We made clay things that we would sell to people. We put on shows and invited our neighbors to come and pay an admission price to let us entertain them.
Wow, Hollywood of the South, huh?
Exactly. Of Santa Claus, Georgia, of all places. And everything we made, we had to give 10% to the church and give to God through the church. And so when I turned 16 and got a real job in high school and got a car and had insurance and fuel and all to pay, everything that I made at working at Smith's Fried Chicken after school, I had to give 10% to the church, and the other 90 then was for car payment and gas and insurance and all the various school functions that I had to pay for.
So it sounds like your giving was that you said your parents kind of made you give that 10%. I mean, it sounds like that was your giving initially was kind of legalistic.
Very much so. The Bible taught tithing, and so our church and my family very much was legalistic in our giving 10% of everything.
You still feel that way?
Not so legalistic about it anymore. I think over the time, my theology has changed, and as my theology changed, my theology of giving has changed. And so thinking of God as a very gracious and generous God, giving 10% is not something that I have to do. It's something I want to do. It's something that I want to do to express to God my support, my desire to follow, a desire to say thank you, a desire to say I love you for the way that you have loved me, and a way just to say, I don't trust in myself to be able to survive and make it, or our family. I trust you, God. You're going to take care of us. And so 10%, yeah, I mean, even more than 10%. And we do that. We've grown to the place where we give even more than 10% because it really is an expression of so much more and not legalistic so much.
Yeah. I think that that journey from legalism to kind of a more joyful generosity it's not all that uncommon. We tend to see that giving as a discipline, when you start out with that 10%, or you start out at any percent, you sort of train yourself to that this is important. You put God first. You really focus on the internal process that you have to go through to be able to be able to give, and eventually you start to form a different relationship with giving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, I think as our relationship with God changes, our relationship with giving changes, very much so. And it's something that just continues. It's a long journey. It's not something that that happens overnight, but even while we've been here at Cumming First United Methodist Church, I remember one year during our stewardship campaign, waking up or having a dream. I'm not exactly sure what state of sleep I was in, but somewhere in there, I had this figure that just came to my mind like a bingo game or something, that this was the amount that we were to give, and it was way more than we had been giving.
And how did Julia receive that dream?
Well, Julia's been really good. Even when we got married, I was insisted. It was one of my things was that we were going to tithe our household income, and she was okay with that. But I knew when I said to her, we're going to go way above what we've been given to the church and give even more here at Cumming First Methodist, there was some hesitancy to have that conversation, because, if you're going to do more, that means you're going to do less in some areas to be able to do more at the church. And so, but we sat down and talked about it, prayed about it, and she, we agreed that if this is what we felt God was calling us to do, then we wanted to do that. We wanted to support this church, and we wanted to express our love and faith and trust in God too. So we did it.
Yeah,
and it's worked out just fine.
And that was Jennifer and I experienced a sort of a similar journey where, I didn't grow up with a strictly legalistic view of giving. In fact, my parents gave I think they modeled generosity in a really powerful way. But as I went off to college and seminary, I actually gave very little. I in fact, the only voice that really spoke into that moment for me was a friend who said, "Well, I feel like if you don't have very much, God doesn't really want you to give." And now I think that's not very good theology, but back then, as a poor college student, I remember thinking, okay, I can buy into that. And so I didn't. And tragically, I went through 3 years of seminary and 4 years of college involved in my campus ministry. And I don't remember anybody ever really talking to me about giving or teaching about giving. Maybe I was just conveniently absent for those Sundays. But when I got my first appointment, an older clergy person who was kind of a mentor said to me, your church members are going to know whether you give. So I had this, I remember having this oh no kind of moment, because at that point we were just a few dollars in the offering plate. And as the pastor, the plate didn't even pass by me, so it was easy not to give at all. Yeah. Well, Jennifer and we really started working toward a tithe. And at that point it was pretty strictly a legalistic thing. I was like, okay, I can do this. I got to do this because I felt like it's the right thing to do. And and it gradually shifted from obligation to become more of a sense of joy and a sense of generosity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think tithing is a good thing. Yeah. I think the reason maybe tithing came to be was just that it's a fair thing. Because like you said, some people don't have a lot, especially when you're a teenager in college, a young adult even, getting married, having children. There's times in our families where we struggle a little harder, but the 10% thing is just fair. I mean, if you make $20,000, 10% of $20,000. If you make $200,000, 10% of $200,000. And so it's kind of an affordable thing no matter what level of income one has, that God is asking us all to get to be a part, to play our part, and to be there at the same, not the same level of giving, but the same percentage of giving at least, and growing in that. So I think it's a good thing and a fair thing that God has created.
Well, it certainly is it certainly creates an environment where everyone is asked to give relative to their ability, and not it's not like God said you have to give $10,000. That's if there were even dollars invented in the Bible.
Right.
But it puts everybody in the same relationship with their giving, and there is a certain reality that if you're giving 10% of a very small income, that's a big challenge. That's a big stretch.
It is
compared to if Jeff Bezos is giving 10%, that's a different kind of dynamic.
Yeah.
But when one of the things that it encourages us to do, it leads us to do, is set priorities, and that's and to recognize, as you said a minute ago, that we recognize who is the source of our gifts, and it gives us the opportunity to respond to that acknowledgement, to that recognition, by ordering our priorities and putting God first.
Yeah. I had a young couple not too long ago here in this church tell me that when they started tithing, that one of the things they had to start doing was they had to start being better stewards of the other 90%, that they really had to develop a budget, and they had to get more disciplined in how they spent all their money if they were going to give 10% to the church. And so it's helpful in many different ways.
In that sense, by that story, it certainly can form sort of a training role. It gives us the ability to put one foot in front of the other. In fact, there's a kind of a metaphor of a race. If someone's wanting to learn to run a marathon, they don't start out by running the 26 plus miles. They start out slowly, and so you're just gonna get out on the road. You're gonna let your body condition, and eventually you'll be able to do it. But it's not just the running activity. It's a whole life endeavor. You got to eat well, you got to sleep right, and that all of that contributes to be able to do this thing.
Yeah. I think I'd rather give 10%, but yeah.
I feel you. I am not a runner. I ran cross country in high school and quit because I just realized I hated running. So, that's
I remember when I was associate pastor one day, the senior pastor stopped his sermon and turned around and looked at me, and he said, "Matt, do you run?" I said, "Not unless somebody's chasing me." So it's not anything I've ever found joy in doing.
Yeah, but we all have to start somewhere, right?
Exactly. And then that's the wonderful thing, I think, about what you have taught and what's become our motto kind of, is that give something. Just give something. Mm-hmm. Start somewhere. And then do that regularly, and then grow in your giving, and you can eventually get to the 10%, and even
maybe
beyond.
Go beyond,
yeah. And so I think it's important. We often, and I understand, because church has had a history, and preachers on television just making a muck of money and trying to get rich schemes and things, and this whole prosperity gospel idea. But we can't let the bad and negative parts mess up what God has really taught us, that God has blessed us with days and hours in our lives. He's blessed us with resources. He's blessed us with so many things, and all of them, our money, our days, our life, our service, our strength, it all has to be used for God's work and God's glory. That's what we're all here for. And so find a way to do that, because, anytime we're not disciplined about how we use our lives and our resources, we use them anyway. It's just that they can be very purposefully used, or they could just be mindlessly used up. And I don't think there's anybody who's got so much money that they don't even know how to spend it all. We find ways to spend it, whether we can afford a new car or whether we can afford a new yacht. We find ways to spend what we have. If we're not mindful, we'll just be used it and not really planned out how it can be most purposefully used.
Well, I think it starts, and you, I don't know if it's a little slip of the tongue or what, but you said how we use our money. And I think one of the most important paradigm shifts we can have is to start to see the resources we hold not as ours, but as someone else's who has entrusted them to us.
Yeah.
These blessings that we enjoy ultimately come from God. They're the scriptures are full of these images that God is this great giver who just gives and gives and gives. And every one of those gifts has a purpose, has a vision behind it. We are free, of course, to respond, to live out of that vision or not. But I think it breaks God's heart when we don't. I think about my own kids, and of course, every parent gives great gifts to their kids. And we got our son his first car. Now, let me be clear: we are of the opinion that it is not his car; it's our car. We're letting him use it, and we made that very clear. But there was still a sort of a gift implied there. This is a big resource that we're entrusting to you, and it was for a purpose, so that he would have freedom to go where he needed to go, and and it set us free too. But the implied the implied obligation behind that, and we tried to make it explicit, was you need to follow these rules. You shouldn't go there, and you should, when you do go somewhere, you need to let us know, and all these things. Well, there were times when he didn't follow those rules, and there was that caused a little grief and anguish, but over time we gave him grace. So just recognizing that what we have is from the Lord, and that it can be we can sometimes forget that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but my name's on my paycheck. But
yep, my name's on my
your
paycheck.
name's on your paycheck, but ultimately, even in Deuteronomy 8, you get the Israelites are about to enter the Promised Land, and Moses is reminding them of all that they've been through, and he says, now even the work that you had, your ability to earn money comes from the Lord. Mm-hmm. Even your ability to earn these, to earn and to produce, this is from God.
Yeah.
So don't be deceived.
Yeah. And don't forget, let's not forget, from where all good gifts flow, from whom all blessings flow.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So.
Yeah. So I think the opportunity in that is as we recognize that's where we have the opportunity to respond. If we're the ones who are earning, because God has blessed us with the ability to do so, what does that mean for all the resources at our disposal? They all have a purpose. They all God has given us this opportunity.
Yeah. Well, there's also a great story in the New Testament in Luke chapter 5, where Jesus instructs Peter and his fellow fishermen and cohorts to cast their nets one more time out into the deep after they've been fishing all night long. And when they do as Jesus says eventually, they find that they catch so much they can't hold them all. So that has always been an amazing story to me about, how God is the one who blesses us. It is not, we can work and work and work and catch absolutely nothing in this life. What I was saying a while ago, we can spend our lives and spend our resources and use it all up, and we get to the end and we're like, and what was that all about or for? Mm-hmm. Without mindfulness and intentionality of how we're really going to use ourselves, and know that God is the one who God's going to show up and really cause us to produce in a big way, and that the thing what is really life.
Yeah, well, the thing that amazes me about that story is it's part of the call of the disciples. Right at the beginning of the gospel, Jesus is, he's bringing them to the disciples to him and going to call them on this journey, and they respond with this total abandonment. They give up everything, it says, or they leave it all behind, and they follow Jesus. And I think we don't need to forget the financial implication in that response. It was, yes, Jesus wasn't asking them to give necessarily, but they left everything. Those boats, those nets, everything, that was their livelihood, and they left it behind in order to follow the Lord.
Yeah. I'm always mindful of my friend John Mitchell, who I went to seminary with, and John was a CPA. He owned his own CPA firm, had lots of CPAs who worked for him. And he heard the call of the ministry. He said he'd been hearing the call of the ministry for years. He'd just been ignoring it. But when he finally got to that place, he couldn't ignore it anymore. He sold his firm and went into ministry, went to seminary. He had the cost of seminary. He took his first appointment at $20,000 a year, annual salary. And he really left it all behind to follow Jesus and to be in ministry. He was always very impressive to me for that fact that he was a real life example of just one way that one might be called to leave it all behind and to come follow Jesus in a new way. That's you got to totally depend on the one who's calling you.
Exactly, and that just because Jesus calls us doesn't mean we have to give up every resource that we have. But what happens with Peter and the others, what happens with this friend of yours, is once we recognize the source of our blessing. I mean, Peter and his friends realize, we've been working all night long, and yet we've caught nothing. Yeah. In fact, they sound pretty despondent when Jesus asked them what they're doing. And then they get this miraculous catch of fish, and then they respond. They recognize and they respond. And our response, it's going to take a lot of different shapes and forms. But one of the things I think the Bible's consistent in is telling us that that when we respond to the one through whom all things in heaven and on earth were created, it's got to involve our generosity. It's got to involve our giving in some way for it to be a fulsome response.
Yeah. Well, there's also just in that exhaustion from Peter and the others about we've fished all night. We've already done this. It just kind of reminds me of in our own lives today that, sometimes we can get so caught up, get so busy, so many things on our agendas, on our calendars, and even as ministers, just the life of the church. And when we get to that place where we're not enjoying living anymore, and we're not enjoying waking up in the morning and looking forward to the new things that God has for us, then I kind of feel like Peter and them were about sick and tired of fishing. But there was this new thing that Jesus was calling them to. And in the midst of that, it just gave them a reason to live, a new excitement about life itself. And it wasn't an easy thing. I mean, the disciples went through some tough times. But it was almost like they had a new inner joy and peace and
it's like they found joy in giving.
They found joy in giving of themselves.
Giving up. They found joy in giving up. They found joy in giving of themselves. And I think any of us, when we really acknowledge that this is a response to God's love, it's a way, it's a means of experiencing joy, of getting closer to the Lord. When we see that grace of God at work in our lives, we respond to that by committing ourselves to Him.
Yeah.
So I love that there are responses to follow, but ultimately, how we follow it, we have to recognize, and this is what I shared at the beginning, is what Generis is committed to, that to follow as a disciple has to include giving of ourselves, giving of our resources, everything that has been given to us. We need to hold on to that loosely, so that because we recognize that there's more where that came from.
Yeah. Well, and even when we join the church and we promise to support the church in the ministries of the church with our prayers, presence, gifts, service, and witness, I always say to people, the most important word in that sentence is the word "and." It's not, I'll do service. No, it's everything. It's about being present It's about giving. It's about serving. It's about witnessing. And so there's no one point or part that we can leave out because we find it difficult. All of them are very important, and giving is definitely one of them, and giving of our financial resources. And it's not just for the life of the church or so the church can make the budget. It's about our spiritual discipline, as you said at the beginning. It's about our spiritual discipleship with God to grow. And it's hard to think that we have given every part of our life to God, but there's one part we still are stingy with. Probably if we're stingy there, we're probably not being as generous as we think in other parts of our lives as well, because it really is something that flows over into every aspect of our life and not just compartmentalized into one.
Well, you said that that this exercise of giving, and it's not just at this time of year, but it's any giving to the church. It's not just about the budget, and that is so important. That this is about what God's doing in our hearts to transform us from the sense of self-centeredness to openness, to recognizing that God is pouring Himself into the world through us so that we can be a blessing, and so ultimately it's about transformation, not about that transaction of I'm going to give so that the lights can stay on. Of course, the lights stay on. Yeah. And it's in part through our giving, but that's not the real purpose. It's to open our hearts up. I think that transitions a little bit into the focus of our work for November. We're going to be kind of talking about this season of giving and giving thanks in a new way, right?
Yes, our theme in November is a season of thanksgiving, and those are two separate words, not Thanksgiving as the holiday, but a season of thanksgiving, thanks and giving. We're already attuned to giving thanks in November because of the holiday, and that should always be the first response we make to God's extravagant generosity. But we also want to focus on how our generosity is an important response as well. So it's a season of thanks and a season of expressing our gratitude to God through our giving. Our sermon series is going to be for November about giving thanks. What does it look like to acknowledge God's blessings and to give thanks for them? And during the offering moment every Sunday, we'll talk briefly about generosity and how we respond to God's blessings through giving. So we're kind of running two parallel themes, one about a season of Thanksgiving and then a sermon series on thanks. And so they go together, but they are different. The thing I'm most excited about is the devotional that we have created, or mainly you have created, for us to use during the whole month of November.
If they like it, it was me. If they don't, I'll just say it was you. How about that?
I did the days you didn't appreciate. He did the ones you do. I challenge you. I challenge all of us to be a part. Give up 10 minutes of your day and read the devotional every day this month. This will be a great way for us to be intentional in learning and praying about God's blessings in our lives, of giving God thanks and growing in our generosity. This devotional will be available online, and in the social media, we'll be trying to remind you that it's there. And so make the effort to go online and find it and use it so that we can all grow together.
Okay. Well, I know that in November we often focus on generosity in some way, but this year there's going to be a little bit of a twist. Matt hinted at this.
Yes, throughout November, we're going to be talking about this, but especially on November 23rd, we're going to do, what we always do during this time of year. We're going to be asking people to fill out a commitment card, an estimate of giving card. The difference this year is that you will not turn this card into the church. This is a covenant that you are making with God, a commitment, a pledge, whatever you want to call it. It is something between you and God. And we're here to encourage you to put this card on your mirror or in your Bible or wherever it can be most available to remind you of your commitment that you've made to God. So we're hoping and asking everybody to make a commitment to God, to write it down, and then to put it somewhere that you can see it and remember it. And giving is a spiritual discipline, as we have said, and it's not just for paying the expenses of the church or making the budget. This is our big emphasis, that giving is a spiritual discipline. So like prayer, Bible study, devotion time, worship, as we grow in giving, we grow closer to God. And as we grow closer to God, we grow in our giving. And we want everyone, all of us, to be as close to God as we possibly can be. So I hope that you'll take this devotion and use it for that very purpose. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for your leadership and your help with this whole process. We've enjoyed working with you this year and look forward to what God has in store down the road.
Well, it's been such a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing what God is going to do through this church. And this church has a long history, but there's so many amazing days ahead with just tremendous vision for the future. And so, thank you for your leadership and for inviting me to be here.
Well, thank you. Glad to have you. Well, and thank you for listening to Matt Talk today. I look forward to sharing with you, especially throughout this month of November and this season of Thanksgiving. I also look forward to seeing you Sunday when we will do the work of ministry together. So come and let's be the church together and put community first. Until we see each other again, may the peace of Christ be always with you.